So, you're thinking about Diablo 3. Is this 10-year-old game still worth getting? Especially with Diablo 4 just around the corner. I'm Jay, and hopefully I can help you make the right decision. Before diving into the specifics of the game, who is this game even for? Well, if you have intense feelings about Diablo 2, are into hardcore games where you need to sink in hours upon hours and plan out everything to T to progress, it's most likely not for you. One of the frequent criticisms of Diablo 3 is its striking departure from the previous entries. The game is aimed at more casual players, where you can get strong builds relatively fast. It mainly depends on building set items, and there are very few permanent decisions, as even for skills, you can just switch them on the spot. The game will let you get good, with even just the odd hour every other day or so. If that sounds like the right amount of commitment to you, then buckle up, cause we have a bunch of stuff to cover. First thing to get out of the way are the different versions of the game. And no, the difference is not just the system you run it on. Let's start with the common features for all the consoles. They all have couch co-op. For me, that's a big plus. I love playing games with people, and while playing online is fun in its own right, nothing beats sitting on the same couch and talking shit while playing with your mates. If you want a co-op game, this could be right for you. Just bear in mind that the user experience is a bit clunky. What do I mean by that? Well, some 200 IQ devs on this implemented the inventory, skill, and basically all of the other interfaces for the player as exclusive. In other words, do you want to change your equipment? Well, the other players are watching you do that. Does your girlfriend want to swap out some skills? Well, you better go to the toilet and, you know what, maybe grab a beer too while you're at it. Seriously, how did this get out of the early dev stages? Did you guys try this? Or did you just assume that everyone has a phone where they can play more Blizzard games while they wait?
Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah, you guys all have phones, right?
Or that not many people will play on the same console in the first place. Now, for the specific consoles or console generations. The game hasn't been supported for ages on the older consoles. The progression in the later stages is slower, and most of the features you will find in the up-to-date versions are not there. It's okay if you have one of those consoles lying around and would like some mindless thing to grind. The combat and gameplay are still satisfying, it's just not as in-depth as the more up-to-date versions. And yeah, a chunk of the things I'm going to mention here will not apply to this version of the game. If you can find a second-hand disc for a couple of bucks, it's not a terrible spend. This is the version of the game that got me into it in the first place, but bear in mind that I got the disc for free. This literally means all the other major consoles, since you might not be able to get this for your Soulja Boy game. These games are kept up to date, so you shouldn't be missing out on any content. If you have a console that can still take a physical disc, then once again, getting a second-hand copy could be worthwhile. I would recommend this version for consoles over the old gen. You might have deduced by now that this version does not have split-screen co-op. Well, it also doesn't have controller support, and there's no button to dodge, unlike the consoles. And the UI is slightly different as well, which honestly might be a good thing, but some of you might prefer the console version. This version of the game is more suited for tryharding. The graphics are slightly dated at this point. Even though you can play some versions of the game at 4K 60 FPS, the neon-y flashy look is definitely not for everyone. And yeah, there was a bit of an outrage when the art was revealed, but in my opinion, it's not that terrible. It doesn't match the art style and the overall mood of the previous games, but to me that's not the end of the world. In terms of the design, it's again not bad, but not outstanding. The various environments can be interesting with a decent amount of detail, but it's nothing to write home about. And some character models are very blatantly recycled, which could be an important consideration for some people as it could impact your immersion. The overall audio quality is good. The music fits the atmosphere, but it sits quite low in the default mix, so if you're interested in the in-game music, you will need to bring down the other parts of the audio quite considerably. The rest of the audio is just adequate. Personally, I don't see the audio as a draw point of the game, and I am actually kinda glad it's not exceptional, as that way I can just put on some music or a Siri in the background and I don't feel like I'm missing out on the experience. In my opinion, the overall gameplay is great. It's different from the previous Diablo games, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. The feeling of combat is great, the skills feel like they have impact, you can feel your character progress as you get better gear and complete builds. You have 7 classes to choose from, 2 of which are DLC classes. I will note that the differences you might be used to from different RPGs, such as strength-based characters being a lot beefier, don't necessarily apply here. They do a bit until you get to the top level and get to the end game. And maybe even there's a slight difference, but if you get into the end game properly, it's not going to be that different between characters. You'll want to avoid getting hit with all the classes, as by the higher difficulties the damage gets ridiculous. Additionally, unless you want to compete for the top of the leaderboards, the choice of your character doesn't really matter, as you should be able to do fairly well with any of them. Now, there are a couple of different types of characters you can create. First, there's the regular and seasonal characters. A regular character is just that, there's nothing special about them. Seasonal characters let you start a new character from scratch each season and obtain seasonal rewards for completing progression milestones, for example clearing a boss at a specific difficulty. Seasonal rewards would include some cosmetics, more stash space so you can store more items in between your characters, and also special pets. During your seasonal play, you might encounter mechanics that are not present in the regular play. For example, in the current season 28, there's Altar of Rites, which provides power-ups based on sacrifices you make to the altar. This is currently not in the regular game, however, it might become a part of it in the later season. The seasonal character will then be turned into a regular character at the end of the season, and you get to start again, if you so choose. A note on seasonal characters. As one of the completion milestones, you get a full set of armor from special sets, which give you pretty big bonuses. So the game aids you a little bit in making you strong and being able to get the rewards. You're not completely at the mercy of RNG Jesus. I will come back to seasons again in a later part. The second choice you make comes down to what happens when you die. With the regular character, it's again pretty regular. You die, you get to resurrect, and also your equipment loses some durability, so there's a caveat to it. The other, hardcore character, when you die, the character is gone. And you get to combine these two choices. So you can have a fully regular character, a seasonal, a hardcore, and a hardcore seasonal character. Now, let's do a quick overview of the classes. Barbarian is the true melee character in Diablo 3. They focus on dishing out damage from up close. One thing to note, when you're playing in a group with some tryhards, it might become difficult getting any playtime with the Barbarian, as ranged characters might clear out a big part of the mobs before you get to them. The Crusader is another short-ranged character. He focuses more on armor, holy damage, and buffs to you and your party. The Crusader also has some unique mechanics, such as using a two-handed weapon as one-handed, and dealing more damage based on his shield block chance. The Demon Hunter, my personal fave. A dexterity based character, they are the only class to use two different resources for their skills, one for offensive and another for defensive abilities. Playing the Demon Hunter relies on getting into the flow of the battle and moving around a lot. Well, at least until you get your build down. Afterwards, you just get to mow down enemies wherever you go. Yeah, I'm not biased in my descriptions at all. Monk is another dexterity based class. However, monks are close range fighters. They can take slightly more damage than Demon Hunters, but they still rely on not letting yourself be cornered or getting caught in crowd control effects. The Necromancer is intelligence based. You can probably guess what the Necromancer does. You get to summon an army of skeletons to your side and to cast various spells using blood, bones, or corpses. One of the builds for the Necromancer relies on exploding a large number of corpses. comes highly recommended. The Witch Doctor brings in parts of different classes and makes them quite unique. You can cast curses, summon monsters, or throw around insects. To me, the Witch Doctor is pretty fun, just because of the creativity of their spells. What about turning yourself into a chicken? Yes, you heard right. There is even a build for this, or you can customize other builds to utilize this skill. It's not the most competitive, but definitely the most stylish, and it's very fun. The wizards are what you would expect. They can cast arcane spells, summon meteors, or a blizzard. Basically, they deal a nice amount of damage from a distance. The name of one of the wizard passive skills describes the class quite well: Glass Cannon. Each class has around 24 skills, split between 6 skill types. In Diablo 3, you don't build a skill tree, rather you unlock individual skills with each level, and once a skill is unlocked, you can continue unlocking various runes for that skill, which change the way the skill works and how it might interact with your build. You get to switch these on the fly, basically anytime outside of combat and greater rifts. Now, this will come down to your preference, as for some people this might break immersion or feel pointless since there's no permanence to these choices. I personally like this a lot, because I get to try the skills and see what fits the way I play. There might come a point where you decide to go for a build and the ability to experiment becomes pointless. But at the same time, it's still nice. It lets you change your character to a viable build, even if at the start of the game you picked some skills which don't really fit that build. Meaning, there's no need to create a new character, nor to have a clear idea of what you're going for right from the start of the game. A quick tip: if you do get the game, go to the settings and turn on elective mode. It might not be incredibly important for the start of the game, but once you get to the end content, it's indisposable. Elective mode lets you select multiple skills from the same skill family, so you can take any skill in any skill slot you want. And basically this mode is needed for any decent build. Each class also has some weapons that are specific to that class, and they have class specific sets. Set is a collection of armor, jewelry, and or weapons that give you bonuses based on how many pieces of the whole set you have. These bonuses can be pretty modest or downright batshit insane. Characters have 70 levels, after which you get to Paragon levels. Paragon levels let you level up basically endlessly, and each lets you put a point into things like core attributes, so that's strength, dexterity, and intelligence, gold drops, area damage, and many others. When you have your character up and ready, you can select one of several game modes. There's the story mode, which I would say is self-explanatory. Adventure mode, where you get to move freely between all the areas in the act map and complete 5 bounties. After completing all of the 5 bounties, you get a reward cache containing equipment, currencies, and crafting items. The adventure mode is better suited for quick leveling and getting items. The last mode is Challenge Rifts, which are weekly challenges taking place in rifts. I'll get to this mechanic soon. And are based on rifts that real players completed in the past, so these are always unique. You get the character, equipment, and skills that the player was using, and you have to beat the rift in a specified time to get the rewards. These tend to be very nice when you start a new seasonal character to give you some crafting materials to get you started. You're likely to spend the most time playing the adventure mode, which lets you play rifts. Rifts are randomized dungeons. There are 2 kinds. The first is a Nephilim Rift, which you can start up at any time. This rift gives you some rewards and can award you keys to access the second type of rift. The Nephilim Rift you can complete at your own pace. Now, the second type, so-called Greater Rifts, can be played only from level 70, are timed, and they are split into tiers of difficulties. Before you start the rift, you select which tier you want to play, and the UI will also let you know what difficulty that tier corresponds to. The higher the level, the better your rewards will be. This also gives you legendary gems, which are gems that give unique bonuses, and you can also upgrade these gems at the end of the rift. However, to get the gems and the opportunity to upgrade them, you need to beat the rift and kill its guardian before a 15-minute timer expires. When you beat the rift before the timer, you also unlock more difficulties to beat. Depending on how well you've done, you'll unlock a higher number of difficulties. The game lets you play with up to 3 other players at the same time. This can be couch co-op on consoles or online on both consoles and PC. Now, when you join up with someone, the game scales up its difficulty. The experience and gold gain are increased as well, and this is changed by 10% per each new player joining to maximum of 30. The last change when you join up with someone is that if there's a big gap between your levels, for example you're trying to level up your friend, the game will make the lower level player an apprentice, which means that the player will get a damage boost and a protection boost, so their damage output and resistance are more in line with the higher level player. For those of you that are interested in PvP, there is an option to brawl. You can start this by going to Neck the Brawler that you can find somewhere in the town. He teleports you to a different location where you can take part in PvP. Brawling is opt-in, so you can't get dragged into it, and it doesn't have an impact on the game outside of the brawl. So for example, if you were to die in a brawl with a hardcore character, the character won't be dead. And for non-hardcore characters, you won't lose the durability of your items by dying either, so you don't have to worry about the brawl hurting your progress. The game has been up and running for quite a while, and there's nothing to suggest that Blizzard intends to dump it anytime soon. While it's been announced that the next season, Season 29, will be the last one, that sounds worse than it actually is. It's nothing to worry about if you would be buying the game for the first time, or maybe if you've played it a bit back when it came out. The season will be last in terms of new content. In other words, the following seasons from 30 and onwards will not have new cosmetics and mechanics, but they will instead remix the content of the older seasons. Therefore, if you're a newcomer to the game, there is still going to be quite a lot of content for you to play. Actually, unless you've played every single season up to now, there will be some content for you to explore. Another reason for concern could be the fact that the game is always online for PC, and with Diablo IV out, Blizzard might decide to pull the plugs on Diablo 3 servers. If you're buying the console versions, then this is not a problem, as the game does not rely on any servers or having an internet connection. But what about the PC? Well, there are a couple of options to how this could go down when they eventually decide to take the servers down. Option A. Blizzard says screw you guys and takes the servers down and the game with it. You could still play the game again by getting a console and a copy of the game there, but your characters and everything else is gone. I don't think this is a likely scenario. Option B. Blizzard pulls a big brain move and releases a final patch, which removes the always online requirement from the game. So players who have the game can still play it after they've decided it's not worth keeping the servers up. However, to be honest, I don't think this is something we'll need to worry about for quite a while. And when they do, I could see them just going with the option B. The serverless change shouldn't be too difficult for them to make, and that way, even if the game doesn't have any hosting costs anymore, they could still make the odd sale here and there for the game. So personally, I think it would make sense to go this way. However, for the next couple of years, you can quite safely get this even on PC without worrying that it's going to be gone tomorrow. Now, I won't be covering the story, as A. I don't want to spoil anything, B. If you're considering the purchase of the game, you don't need to know the full story to make that informed decision, and C. I think the story is ripe to be made into a video of its own that I would be able to meme up, and I wanted this video to be actually helpful, not just memes. So, just to give you an idea, there is a story in the game. It's not a masterpiece, actually nowhere near it. I would say the story is more of a side part of the game. If you'd be playing only for the story, I think the game might not be for you, as it definitely wasn't a prime focus for the game. There are better story-driven RPGs out there if you want to play something like that. If you're in for the gameplay, the loot grind, or just something to play from a couch with your close ones, with a beer in hand, then I would say you just got the tiny story part as a bonus. That's the best way to look at it, in my opinion. In that case, it's completely fine for what it is. One thing I have to give to the story, there was a twist or two that I actually wasn't expecting, so yeah, that's something. If you're interested in the story for the sake of keeping up with the series and to have an idea of what happened before the fourth game, but are not too sold on the rest of this, just watch a video on YouTube giving you a summary. That should be just fine. If you're still here, I'm impressed, thank you. Let me know your thoughts in the comments and consider checking out our other videos. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, have a good one.